Chapter 8. Joe and the Magic Snowman. If you remember, Joe's just been taken up through the hole at the top of the magic faraway tree, and the children and Moonface don't know quite what's happened to him yet. Moonface was most upset to see Joe disappear. "I told him not to! I told him!" he groaned. "You didn't," sobbed Franny. "Your mouth was too full of toffee, and all you said was, 'Ooble, ooble, ooble, ooble.' And how can we know what you mean?" "Where's Joe now?" asked Beth, quite pale with shock. Yes, indeed, where was Joe? Someone had lifted him right off the ladder, up into the land of ice and snow. And there, strangely enough, the moon and the sun were in the sky at the same time, one at one side and the other opposite, shining both with a pale light. Joe shivered, for it was very cold. He looked up to see what it was that had lifted him off the ladder, and he saw in front of him a big, strange creature, a snowman. He was just like the snowmen Joe had so often made in the winter-time, round and fat and white, with an old hat stuck on his head and a carrot for his nose. "This is luck," said the snowman, in a soft, snowy sort of voice. "I've been standing by that hole for days, waiting for a seal to come up, and then you came." "Oh," said Joe, remembering that seals came up to breathe through holes in the ice. "That wasn't a water hole. That was the hole that led down to the faraway tree. I want to go back, please." "The hole is closed up," said the snowman, and Joe looked. To his great dismay, he saw that a thick layer of ice had formed over the hole, so thick that he knew perfectly well he could never break through it. "Whatever shall I do now?" he said. "Just what I tell you," said the snowman with a grin. "This is splendid. In this dull and silent land there is nothing but polar bears and seals and penguins. I have often wanted someone to talk to." "How did you get here?" asked Joe, wrapping his coat firmly round him, for he was bitterly cold. "Ah," said the snowman, "that's a long story. I was made by some children long ago, and when they had finished me, they laughed at me and threw stones at me to break me up. So that night I crept away here, and I made myself king. But what's the good of being king if you've only bears and things to talk to? What I really want is a good servant who can talk my language, and now you've come." "But I don't want to be your servant," said Joe indignantly. "Nonsense," said the snowman, and he gave Joe a push that nearly sent him over. Then, on big, flat snow feet, he moved forward to where there was a low wall of snow. "Make me a good house," he said. "I don't know how to," said Joe. "Oh, just cut blocks of this stiff icy snow and build them up one on top of another," said the snowman. "When you've finished, I'll give you a warm coat to wear. Then you won't shiver so much." Joe didn't see that he could do anything else but obey, so he picked up a shovel that was lying by the wall and began to cut big bricks of the frozen snow. When he had cut about 20, he stopped and placed them one on top of another till one side of the round house was made. Then he began to cut snow bricks again, wondering all the time how in the world he would ever be able to escape from this strange land. Joe had often built little snow houses of soft snow in his garden at home during the winter. Now he had made a big one, with proper snow blocks, as hard as bricks. He quite enjoyed it, though he did wish the girls were there too. When he had finished it and made a nice rounded roof, the snowman came shuffling up. "Very nice," he said. "Very nice indeed. I can just get in, I think." He squeezed his big snow body inside and threw out a thick coat for Joe, made of wool as soft and as white as the snow all around. Joe put it on very thankfully. Then he tried to squeeze in after the snowman, for he wanted to be out of the cold, icy wind. But he was so squashed between the snowman and the walls of the snow house that he couldn't breathe. "Don't push so," said the snowman disagreeably. Move up." "I can't," gasped poor Joe. He felt quite certain that he would be pushed right out of the snow hut through a hole in the wall. Just then there came a curious grunt at the doorway. The snowman called out at once, "Is that you, Furry? Take this boy to your home under the ice. He's a nuisance here. He keeps squashing me." Joe looked up to see who Furry was, and he saw a great white bear looking in. The bear had a stupid but kind look on his face. "Oomph," said the bear, and pulled Joe out into the open air. Joe knew it was no use to struggle. Nobody could get away from a bear as big as that. But the bear was certainly very kindly. "Oomph," he said to Joe, with a loud grunting noise. "I don't know what you mean," said Joe. The bear said no more. He just took Joe along with him, half carrying the little boy, for Joe found the way very slippery indeed. They came to a hole that led under the ice and snow. The bear pushed Joe down it, and to Joe's enormous surprise, he found there was a big room underneath, with 5 bears there, big and little. It was quite warm in there too. Joe was astonished, for there was no heater, of course. "Oomph," said all the bears politely. "Oomph," said Joe, and that pleased the bears very much. They came and shook paws with Joe very solemnly and oomphed all over him. Joe liked the look of the bears much more than he liked the look of the snowman. He thought perhaps they might help him to escape from this silly land of ice and snow. "Could you tell me the way back to the faraway tree?" he asked the bears politely and clearly. The bears looked at one another and then oomphed at Joe. It was quite clear that they didn't understand a word he said. "Never mind," said Joe with a sigh, and made up his mind to put up with things until he could see a way to escape. The snowman was a great nuisance. No sooner had Joe settled himself down for a nap, leaning his head against the big warm body of a bear, than there came a call from the snow house. "Hey, boy, come here and play dominoes with me." So Joe had to go and play dominoes. And as the snowman wouldn't let him come into the house because he said he was squashed, Joe had to sit in the doorway and play. He nearly froze to bits. Then another time, just as he was eating a nice bit of fried fish that one of the bears had kindly cooked for him, the snowman shouted to him to come and make him a window in his house, and Joe had to hurry off and cut a sheet of clear ice to fit in one side of the snow house for a window. Really, that snowman was a perfect nuisance. "I wish to goodness I'd never stepped into this silly land," thought Joe 100 times. "It's a good thing the bears are so nice to me. I only wish they could say something else besides oomph." Joe wondered what Beth and Franny were doing. Were they upset when he didn't come back? Would they go home and tell their father and mother what had happened? Beth and Franny were upset. It had been dreadful to see poor Joe disappear through the cloud like that. Moonface looked very solemn too. He could speak quite well now that he had swallowed all his toffee. "We must rescue him," he said, his face shining like a full moon. "How?" asked the girls. "I must think," said Moonface, and he shut his eyes. His head swelled up with his thinking. He opened his eyes and nodded his head. "We'll go to Goldilocks and the 3 bears," he said. "Her bears know the land of ice and snow. She might be able to help Joe that way." "But where does Goldilocks live?" asked Beth in wonder. "I thought she was just a fairy tale." "Good gracious, no," said Moonface. "Come on, we have to catch a train." "What train?" said Franny in astonishment. "Oh, wait and see," said Moonface. "Hurry up now. Go down the slippery slip and wait for me at the bottom."